is to get started. Welcome to the Too Much to Say podcast, where we have too much to say. Episode 19, Hillary versus Trump, 20 months later. We're going to be doing a deep dive into the controversies of both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump during the 2016 election. Because honestly, I was guilty of this. I was guilty of, I guess, feeling negatively against both of them. And I didn't. I actually voted for Gary Johnson. So we're going to go back because I think a lot of people felt that way. Where the question was, or the feeling was, I'm just picking. I don't want to vote for either of these people. I have to vote, for the lesser of two evils. That Hillary's not better than Trump. Lock her up, all that. So we're gonna dive into that. But first, we're gonna hit with the weekly random. Might need to swap that. Welcome, Debbie Hill. Might need to swap that up a little bit. The weekly random. It's not so random anymore. But first thing we're gonna hit up is Trump admits. So this one comes from NPR. Trump admits his son met with the Russian lawyer to get dirt on Clinton. And this actually comes from his own tweet, where he tweets out, fake news reporting a complete fabrication, that I am concerned about the meeting my wonderful son Donald, this is Donald Trump Jr., had in Trump Tower. This was a meeting to get information on an opponent, totally legal and done all the time in politics, and it went nowhere. I did not know about it! Exclamation point. Donald Trump, not Jr. A, it's hard for me to believe you didn't know about it, but B, meeting with a foreign power to get help with your election, generally not legal. I'm just throwing that one out there for you. But that's why Robert Mueller. Oh, let me while we're talking about Robert Mueller, happy birthday to Robert Mueller. Today is his, I believe it's 74th birthday on August 7th. So, and hopefully when this is all said and done, we can make this a national holiday. Anyway, move on to the next story. This comes from AP News. The report is Trump Commission did not find widespread voter fraud. So at the end of the election, right before and right after the election, Trump claimed that there was widespread voter fraud and that if there had not been, he would have won the popular vote as well. So he, of course, once he was elected, put together a commission to search this out, root it out. And yeah, today they, and I guess, actually, yeah, it was today, wasn't it? It was really recent. Let's see when this one came out. Yeah, sorry, it's the 3rd, so 4 days ago. 4 days, they came out with their findings, and that's that. There wasn't that much voter fraud. Meaning that Trump argued that people had voted multiple times. Whether or not the election was interfered with, foreign, that's a different thing. This is talking about local voter fraud. So we will the interference. Well, there are indictments out there right now that Russia did in fact interfere. All right. Next one we have coming out of Africa. 3 journalists were killed in Africa while investigating a private military business owned by the man behind Russia's troll army. So the troll army, the one that was behind the hacking of, well, not just hacking, yeah, well, in part behind hacking of Hillary and Podesta. but also just the constant stream of just negative, just inflammatory tweets and posts on Reddit and a subreddit, the Donald. Um, basically, there were 3 correspondents who went out to investigate his, I guess, military business. And they were traveling in on a Monday night, and where they were ambushed. And they were just okay. When the journals returned to Sibut, where the Russian military's instructor base is located, from the north of the country, from the city of Kagabandoro, which was not actually under the control of the Kar government. According to the driver who survived the attack, armed attackers emerged from the bush, opened fire on the vehicle, and the passengers died there. The journalists' bodies were found 23 kilometers from Sibut. If you're wondering, this is why when Trump says he wants to be friends with Russia, not this isn't the only reason, but this is one of the reasons why we're not friends with Russia. It's not because we just, loathe Russia. It's because they don't share our same morals. And we'll see what this just happened, so we'll see what comes out of that, and anything new comes up, we'll talk about next week. But this one strikes a little closer to home, because it was actually, this one came out today. We had the EPA. Yesterday. EPA is now allowing asbestos back into manufacturing. So asbestos, the thing that basically kills people when they breathe in the little shards of it and they can't get it out of their lungs, they're going to let people manufacture and assumably use this. But what's very interesting about this is that this whole deal, if you want to know who the #1 manufacturer of asbestos is in the world, if you thought it was Russia, you're right. They make 55% of the asbestos in the world. And there's actually an asbestos manufacturer who has made, I should have put this into a picture, but is now shipping asbestos out with Donald Trump's face on it. That sounds like a joke, but it's not. So, so when you're watching daytime television, if that's still a thing in 20 years, you will still get to see those commercials about asbestos related lawsuits and class action lawsuits where you can get some money back for the fact that you're slowly dying. So that feels good. I went ahead and threw that link into the chat for you if you're interested on reading more about it. You should. Anyway, let's move on to the Reddit shower thought of the week. Something a little, little happier. But this one comes from user Migriven. If you're no longer covered by your parents' health insurance, your manufacturer's warranty is over. I don't know if that's positive or negative, but that's a clever way of looking at it. All right, let's go on to the main event here for the week, where we're going to dive into Trump versus Hillary. And we're actually going to start this off looking at, honestly, Hillary and all of her controversies, because I feel like that's the #1. I felt the least informed about Hillary Clinton's many, I guess, foibles, if you will. There we go. So, #1 for Hillary Clinton. the one that kind of dogged, I think there's two main that dogged, and we're going to get into a little bit. The first one was the email controversy. This was where Hillary Clinton basically was using a private server while she was Secretary of State for President Obama. And basically you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to transmit classified information back and forth on your own server, private server, third party server. You're supposed to be using the top secret, government sanctioned servers and computers. What the government wanted to do was install a desktop computer at her house for her, and she didn't want to do that. So, what was found out? Because there was a whole thing. Basically, this is where lock her up comes from the Trump side of things. They want to lock her up because she was using her own private server. Well, what people found is that first off, there were no emails on her private server that were actively marked classified. However, there were 100 emails that contained classified information but did not have that classification markings at the time they were sent, and 2,093 emails that were not marked classified but would retroactively be ranked as confidential by the State Department. So she did have some confidential information on her server. Well, then why didn't we lock her up? Well, funny you should ask, because Donald Trump the investigation into Hillary continued into Donald Trump's presidency. And I think if we can all agree, Donald Trump was not going to do Hillary Clinton any favors. He doesn't do that, especially not for his enemies. So, in July of 2016, Comey announced that the FBI's investigation had concluded that Clinton was extremely careless in her handling of her email system, but recommended that no charges be filed against her. And then in July 6th, Attorney General, so Comey was the FBI, head of the FBI. And then the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, announced that no charges would be filed. Now, what does that all mean? In my opinion, so should we have been angry at Hillary? Should we have held this against Hillary Clinton? I guess in some ways it depends on personal preference. In the sense that, in my opinion, I think that Hillary comes off just as naive. She acted as I would expect many old people who are not familiar with technology would have. She essentially chose ease over security, thinking it probably to be no big deal. Because she wanted to use her BlackBerry, she wanted to use her personal server, she wanted to use her iPad, rather than having to carry two devices or have to use the government's computer. It seems more something of ignorance, something of just sort of laziness. Now, personally, I wish that everybody who is in the White House, who is in Congress, was knowledgeable technologically. I wish they understood the future of the world, essentially, where technology is going, how it affects us in our everyday lives, and they're more familiar with that. But the reality is that's not the case. That if we held everybody to that standard, then we wouldn't have very many people left. And I don't think that it's fair to even assume that Donald Trump would have been that much different. I don't know of him being technically savvy at all. So I don't know. I think in some ways, I don't think it was malicious at the end of the day. I just think that it's bad optics. I'm sure she would do it again if she had a chance, but I don't think that it deserves the lock her up chance. And neither did the FBI or the Attorney General. And let's be honest, at the end of the day, this controversy most likely caused the most damage to Clinton in her presidential campaign, thanks to James Comey and him reopening the investigation, like, what was it, like 2 weeks before the election? And then closing it out the next week saying, oh, we didn't find anything. But I think that felt very much like the final blow against her. Even though, as we found out, there's a lot of smoke and no fire here. It was more ignorance, and she didn't really knowingly do anything wrong, according to the emails that were found. All right, number 2 for Clinton is Benghazi. So let's do a little history check here, a little fact check of what happened and what was Benghazi. In 2012, the Benghazi attack was a coordinated attack against the United States government facilities in Benghazi, Libya, by members of the Islamic militant group Ansar al-Sharia. At 9:40 p.m. on September 11th, members of Ansar al-Sharia attacked the American diplomatic compound in Benghazi, resulting in the deaths of U.S. Ambassador to Libya, J. Christopher Stevens, and U.S. Foreign Service Information Officer Sean Smith. Stevens was the first U.S. ambassador killed in the line of duty since 1979. At around 4 a.m. on September 12th, the group launched a mortar attack against a CIA annex approximately 1 mile away, killing 2 CIA contractors and wounding 10 others. At the behest of the CIA, top U.S. officials initially described the attacks as the result of spontaneous protests triggered by the recently released anti-Muslim video Innocence of Muslims. Subsequent investigations showed the attack was premeditated. All the rioters and looters are not originally part of the group may have joined in the attacks after they began. So, where in there does Clinton fit? Well, the Republicans actually did their own deep dive into this. Both Republicans and Democrats did this. But we're going to actually look at what the Republicans found, because if anything, they should skew negatively against Clinton. So let's look at those. And what they found is that the State Department, of which Hillary Clinton was the head, had failed to protect the U.S. diplomats in Libya. Clinton and the administration should have realized and addressed risks. Now, the Democrats were actually, in this case, much harder against Clinton. They said that security measures in Benghazi were woefully inadequate. The CIA, so that was point 1. Point 2 was the CIA misread how dangerous Libya was in the midst of a revolution after overthrowing Gaddafi a year earlier. Number 3, the Department of Defense failed to rescue Americans. U.S. military forces did not reach Benghazi until mid-afternoon the day after the initial attack on the compound. So they were attacked 9 p.m. in 2011, on September 11th, and nobody reached that until noon, September 12th. So that was the Department of Defense. No U.S. military asset was ever deployed to Benghazi, despite the order of the Secretary of Defense at 7 o'clock that night. The administration, number 4, the administration subverted investigation through what Gowdy described as intentional, coordinated, and shameful stonewalling. Clinton deleted numerous emails on the private server she was using for official business, which the report says makes it impossible to ever represent to those killed in Benghazi that the record is a whole. So this is another piece of the email controversy, that she had deleted numerous emails I believe, I think they actually got 30,000 emails off the servers. As you saw, it was 2,000 emails, roughly 2,300 emails that had some sort of information on them that was confidential out of 30,000. And there were numerous, I think another 30,000 of private emails that were deleted, which is legal and sanctioned. They're allowed to delete personal emails, even on their private server. So that's what he's referring to. So, number 6, Americans were transported to the Benghazi. Number 6 was that the people who actually helped the Americans, the only people that helped the Americans, were Gaddafi loyalists, and those are the same group that the U.S. had sought to oust earlier. So, how culpable was Hillary in this? Did she make a mistake? The answer is yes. But her mistake was kind of the same mistake the CIA made. The State Department and the CIA should have realized and addressed the risks, but it wasn't just the State Department, it was also the CIA. And Clinton has actually taken responsibility for this. But once the situation began to happen, it was now out of her hands and now in the hands of the Department of Defense, who also failed to act, who failed to get troops on site. I mean, we're talking, this is like if you called the police and they showed up the next day, it was what, almost 20 hours, 16 hours later, somewhere around there. That's bad. So, I'm sure she's not. Obviously, no one's happy that this happened or proud of that this happened, but the negative impact that people had against her for this, mind you, this is a tragedy. There were 4 lives lost, and the first ambassador since 1979. But she's not. I guess she's not she's not a criminal for what happened. It was a failure as a Secretary of State, but it was also the failure of the CIA. So not a proud moment for either of those agencies. And I think that she deserved to receive the criticism that she got, essentially. All right, number 3, let's go. WikiLeaks. So this is a controversy. Well, let's dive into it. So in March of 2016, John Podesta, a former White House chief of staff and the chairman of Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign, his personal Gmail account was hacked by a Russian intelligence-linked group called Fancy Bears. Fancy Bears handed the emails off to WikiLeaks through some means. Nobody actually knows how, but they know that WikiLeaks started to publish them later that year in daily installments. An act that even the country of Ecuador, the head of WikiLeaks was staying at that time, Julian Assange, viewed as a deliberate effort by the WikiLeaks founder to directly affect the outcome of the upcoming U.S. presidential election. These emails were used essentially by Russia and by WikiLeaks, who, I don't think you can really separate the two when they work together, when they work hand in hand to accomplish a single goal. They're essentially used as a constant distractor to keep the scrutiny on Clinton rather than Trump. This email subject because mind you, these emails, the Podesta emails, are not these are not confidential emails. But by using the Podesta emails and the email controversy and fusing, kind of blurring the lines between the two, they were able to give fresh legs to the email controversy. And like I said, blur the lines, so you thought they were still talking about the the first email controversy, which she was inevitably cleared of, and um, with James Comey basically coming out and reigniting the email controversy again by saying, "Oh, we have more emails we need to look at." It was a severe blow to Hillary Clinton's campaign. And there's actually evidence of these, basically not every time, but when one specific controversy for Trump came out, the grab her by the pussy incident, that emails were released immediately to distract from that. This wiki, and at the end of the day, nothing major or really minor was ever found in these emails. This is part of what they're talking about when the concerted effort to keep Hillary from getting into office. So I'm going to mark this one as a not fair controversy for Hillary Clinton. It was unnecessary damage to her reputation and to her campaign. Yeah. This is part of the way that the Russian trolls tried to undermine her campaign. So, number 4. The phrase basket of deplorables. So, in a campaign speech at an before an LGBT group, Hillary Clinton, let's go ahead and read the transcript here. I know that there are only 60 days left to make our case. And don't get complacent. Don't see the latest outrageous, offensive, inappropriate comment and think, well, he's done this time. We are living in a volatile political environment. You know, to be grossly generalistic, you could put half of Trump's supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. Right? They're racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it. And unfortunately, there are people like that. And he has lifted them up. He has given notice to their websites that used to only have 11,000 people. Now have 11 million. He tweets and retweets their offensive, hateful, mean-spirited rhetoric. Now some of those folks, they are irredeemable, but thankfully they are not America. But the other basket, I know because I look at this crowd. I see friends from all over America here. I see friends from Florida and Georgia and South Carolina and Texas, and as well as New York and California. But that other basket of people are people who feel the government has let them down. The economy has let them down. Nobody cares about them. Nobody worries about what happens to their lives and their futures, and they're just desperate for change. It doesn't really even matter where it comes from. They don't buy everything he says, but he seems to hold out some hope that their lives will be different. They won't wake up and see their jobs disappear, lose a kid to heroin, feel like they're in a dead end. Those are people we have to understand and empathize with as well. So, in context, the comment basket of deplorables isn't as bad. And well, let's look at this. Actually comes from the Boston Globe. Diane Hessen, who was actually in charge of it was part of the Hillary campaign, looking at undecided voters and that sort of thing. This is what she said about it, though. One moment when I saw more undecided voters shift to Trump than any other, when it all changed, when voters began to speak differently about their choice. You know, and this is a quote, this is Diane Hessen quoting somebody else. You know, he said, Clinton ended up being the biggest bully of them all, whereas Trump bullied her, she bullied Wilkes Barre, meaning the kind of the common man. Now, what politicians need to learn, just like Mitt Romney learned in his 2012 presidential campaign, not to use statistics or percentages for people. To throw around half of his supporters and call them deplorables obviously didn't go over well for her. It didn't affect the people that were already voting for Trump, and it didn't affect the people who were already voting for Hillary. But it convinced, I'd say, people who were maybe middle or slightly undecided leaning Trump to, in many cases, go full Trump. Is anything she said, necessarily wrong? I think the 50% is probably wrong. It's probably somewhere closer to 20 of people who, or maybe even less than that, of people who supported all the things she said. The, homophobic, xenophobic, racist, sexist, all of those things. There are a number of people who are Trump supporters who support all of those things. But to say that 50% of the people that support Trump obviously was a mistake. One that cost her very dearly. Should this have been as negative? I want to say no, but I also think that that's probably true for Romney. I don't think that his 47% comment should have been as heavy hitting for him. Should either of them have said it? I mean, I think the answer is obviously no. Unfortunately, when you're a politician, unless you're Donald Trump apparently, you can't always say what you think. You can't always give the blunt truth or say how you feel about a specific subject. You have to be a politician. I mean, it's kind of the same way we treat our athletes, where we want our athletes to be honest, but when the athletes are honest, people bash them for being honest. Just like what happened this past week. I can't even believe I didn't cover it with Donald Trump, where LeBron James came out, and I guess I covered it on Saturday. But LeBron James came out and he started a school in Ohio, in the Akron area, and he was being interviewed, and people asked him if he wanted to sit across from Trump, and he said no, he would never want to talk to Trump. And then Trump decided to come out and call him stupid and call Don Lemon stupid. Basically, call everybody stupid just because he disagreed with him and doesn't like him. Now, see, normal politicians, of which Hillary is, who's not, playing to a specific base that doesn't care. You can't say that sort of thing. And honestly, it also just kind of like rolled on top of what was already going. The Trump campaign was very successful in painting Hillary as elitist. And I say that from experience because, like I told you before, I did not vote for Hillary. I voted for Gary Johnson. I actually now regret that decision and wish I had voted for Hillary. More because I wish I could have done anything possible to vote against Trump. But like I said, you can't say these sort of things. So let's do a recap what we got for Hillary. We've got the email controversy where she made some pretty bad decisions, made some very old people decisions regarding technology, and chose ease over security. She was not found guilty by a Trump attorney general. Benghazi, where her department made a mistake, but the same mistake that the CIA made, and then the Department of Defense kind of rolled into. And I will say this, I think she was overly criticized for this only because it seems like she took the criticism of all three departments where she was only the head of one. So, and then we've got the WikiLeaks, which I think was completely unfair for her because it kind of inflamed the email controversy again. And finally, we've got the basket of deplorables, which, like I said, was just a bad decision, bad words, and she was rightfully criticized. Honestly, she should have known better. She should have at least learned from Mitt Romney, but she didn't. All right, so let's compare. That's the Clinton controversies during the election. I mean, there's others. People unfairly want to bring up her husband. I'm going to put that all in one garbage can and throw it away because that's not fair. She's not her husband. Yeah, you can't compare her husband's actions and hers. I mean, she was this after her husband left the office of the presidency. She was a senator. She was a secretary of state. So she wasn't riding the coattails of her husband, nor was she her husband. All right, so let's go into Donald Trump. I actually had to break this down into a few categories for controversies. He probably admittedly is a lightning rod for controversy. But let's look at him at face value. And we're only going to look at controversies, obviously, from the election, from basically November of 2016 back. We're not looking at anything that's happened recently because that obviously has nothing to do with him being elected or not elected. So number one is we're going to look at racism. We've got the Trump campaign announcement speech where Trump says, when Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people. By definition, that's racism. I don't know how anybody can sugarcoat or anything that what he just said was racist and factually incorrect. Number two, under racism, we have David Duke. In February of 2016, the former Ku Klux Klan Grand Master David Duke offered Trump some support. He said, I think he deserves a close look by those who believe that the era of political correctness needs to come to an end. When CNN's Jake Tapper asked Trump whether he should disavow the support, whether or not he should, disavow the former Ku Klux Klan Grand Wizard, Trump replied, just so you understand, I don't know anything about David Duke, okay? So when Trump was told who David Duke was, he just, yeah. Number 3 under racism, we have Muslim immigration ban, which is something that has played into the presidency, but this was a promise of this, where he had promised he would ban Muslims, which is, again, well, I mean, it's prejudice. It's not, I guess it is racist in the sense that they're Arab, but it's prejudice against a religion. And quite frankly, I don't understand why Christians don't see this as something offensive. Why, like, if it is possible to discriminate against one religion, it is possible to discriminate against any religion. Why would you want one religion discriminated against just because it's not yours? Number 4. Attacking Judge Gonzalo P. Curiel. Now, a little bit of backstory here. Judge Curiel was overseeing 2 lawsuits against Trump with Trump University, which we'll cover Trump University a little later. But Trump criticized the judge that was overseeing the cases, and he said, and basically that, alleging that bias in his rulings because of his Mexican heritage. That Judge Curiel wouldn't be able to rule fairly because he's Mexican. Even Paul Ryan came out against Judge Curiel, against Donald Trump about this one. All right, so to just sum up, yeah, this is all pretty bad. I guess a lot of this is just rehashing. I really just want, my goal really here is to just do direct comparison. So I think it's pretty blatantly obvious that Donald Trump is racist. At least definitely against Hispanics, definitely against Muslims or Muslims. Like I said, he threw his support behind David Duke, or he accepted the support of David Duke, a former Ku Klux Klan Grand Wizard. But he also, there's numerous other times where my African American, anyway. So, yeah. All right, next for Donald Trump, let's get sexism. We're actually, I want to, let me pull up we're just going to dive into sexism. We're going to start off with the Access Hollywood tape, because I think that it deserves, and Laura, let's actually pull this up real quick. Oh, give me 1 second. Let's actually, let's do I'll do a recording real quick. Just, Oh, where are you? There you are. All right. Let's throw it up here. You gotta unmute mine. This is.
I moved on her, and I failed. I'll admit it. Whoa. I did try and fuck her. She was married.
It's huge news, Sarah.
No, Nancy. Yeah. No, this was marriages, and I moved on her very heavily. In fact, I took her out furniture shopping. She wanted to get some furniture. I said, "I'll show you where they have some nice furniture." I took her out furniture. I moved on her like a bitch, but I couldn't get there, and she was married. And all of a sudden, I see her. She's now got the big phony tits and everything. She's totally changed her look. I better use some Tic Tacs just in case I start kissing her. You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss.
I think that.
I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the pussy. Grab them by the pussy. Grab them by the pussy.
All right, he didn't repeat it that many times. that comes from the. All right, let's keep going.
I could do anything.
Pull down.
Hello, how are you? Hi.
It actually comes from well, it's a YouTube video now, but it was at that time a an NBC news clip. Now I do want to spend just 2 seconds here on the grabber by the pussy moment, because I still feel like he didn't get enough criticism for it. I know he didn't get enough criticism for it because people aren't even willing to say the phrase grab her by the pussy. And this isn't even just on television. There are people who in private won't even say it because it's so fucking vulgar to say that, to basically advocating sexual assault on a woman, and that people still supported him despite this. Maddening. Maddening. All right. Next, accusations of sexual assault. Donald Trump has had 3 accusations filed on court against him. One by his former wife, his ex-wife now, I guess, Ivana Trump, who accused him of violent assault and rape. And then there is actually one that is currently ongoing with Summer Zervos. Number 4, and then and right now, okay, Trump has had 12 public allegations of unwanted physical contact since 2016. So this is, I mean, these date back to the 1980s all the way up to 2013. And there are at least 3 named pageant contestants who have come out saying allegations of basically pageant dressing room visits. That's right. Trump went into dressing rooms unannounced, and by the words of some of these ladies, where girls were topless. And we're not talking about 18-year-old girls in all these cases. We're talking about younger, topless and naked. Yep. Yeah. All right. All right. So that's number 2, sexual assault. Number 3 is Trump's attitudes toward his daughter. Now, I have 6 quotes for you. The first quote comes from Stormy Daniels. So number 1, Stormy Daniels, which that's another controversy that's happening right now that I'm not including because the bulk of it has happened since his presidency. Daniels told a magazine 6 years ago that she had an affair with Donald Trump starting right after his wife Melania gave birth to their son, Barron. He told me once that I was someone to be reckoned with, beautiful and smart, just like his daughter. Yep, he compared a porn star to his daughter, a porn star he was sleeping with to his daughter. Number 2, when asked what he and his daughter both consider their favorite things, Trump answered, I was going to say sex, but I can relate to golf and real estate. Number 3, Ivanka posing for Playboy would be really disappointing. Not really, but it would depend on what was inside the magazine. I don't think Ivanka would do a nude photo shoot in the magazine, although she does have a very nice figure. I've said that if Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her. Number 4, you know who's one of the great beauties of the world, according to everybody? And I helped create her, Ivanka, my daughter. Ivanka, my daughter Ivanka, she's 6 feet tall. She's got the best body. Number 5, yeah, she's really something, and what a beauty that one. If I weren't happily married, and her father. Number 6, is it wrong to be more sexually attracted to your own daughter than your wife? I think that that's horrifying. I think all 6 of individually are horrifying, but to be able to combine all 6 and attribute all 6 to one man speaking about his daughter, a then presidential nominee and now president, for our president to be fawning after his own daughter is just sickening. All right, so I think that's sexism. Now we're going to move on to shady business practices, because as we all know, Trump basically ran. If you listen to his presidential campaign announcement speech, and actually it's Ivanka coming out there and giving the introduction, talking about how great her father is at everything. That's what that's his brand. That he's money. He's gold and bombastic, and so is he actually a good businessman? And I'm not talking about good in the sense of like making money, but good in the sense of moral. I like to think that the President of the United States would have some sort of moral compass, would want to do right by others. So let's take a look. Well, first we're going to look at whether or not he's, a great businessman, because Trump has always, pushed it back against any time anyone said that he's had bankruptcies. He is, I think, admitted to 4, but there are in fact 6 bankruptcies. Let's go through them real quick. Number 1 was the Trump Taj Mahal. This was in 1991. And in 1993, he actually had 3 bankruptcies. Trump's Castle, Trump's Plaza Casinos, and Trump's Plaza Hotel. In 2004, he had Trump Hotels and Casinos Resorts. Yeah, he's since if you look at those first, how many? 1, 2, 3. 3 of those were all casinos. He's out of the casino business finally. And then number 6 is Trump Entertainment Resorts in 2009. So that was 9 years ago now. Only 7 years prior to his run for president. Now, it's not so much that bankruptcy is an inevitable ruiner of a man, or shows that somebody is a horrible businessman or whatever. It's more that Trump has lied about his record. And we should actually talk about that in a second. All right, so that's number 1. Number 2, Trump has constantly shown a penchant for countersuing, intimidating people who have sued him by countersuing them. A great example of this was Trump University. When Trump University opened in 2005 and closed in 2010, he was sued both by students of his university and the government. Now, Trump ended up, and you're going to see a pattern with Trump. What Trump does essentially is pays money so that he doesn't have to admit any fault. But Trump actually came out, said that he was never going to settle or anything because he had done nothing wrong. But in November 2016, he ended up settling for $25 million. And he had to, basically, I think 21 of those were class action. 4 of that went to some students in New York, and then 1 had to go to the government because he named his university Trump University and didn't have a license to actually run a university. So that's 1, 2, 3. Number 4, tenant intimidation. So this is in New York from 1982 to 1986. Trump bought a building in Central Park South with the intention of turning it into luxury condos. But the problem was that Trump actually already had, or there were already tenants in these in the building. So, and they didn't want to move. So Trump basically tried to, at least according to the Atlantic, use every trick in the book to get them out. He tried to use reverse exceptions the previous landlord had given to knock down walls, threatening eviction. He cut off heat and water, according to tenants. Building management refused to make repairs. Two tenants swore in court that mushrooms grew on their carpet from a leak. The Perhaps the most outlandish move was to place newspaper ads offering to house homeless New Yorkers in empty units. Since, as Trump wrote in The Art of the Deal, he didn't intend to fill units with permanent residents anyway. And then Trump also sued tenants for $150 million when they complained. At the end of the day, Trump gave in. At the end of the day, Trump settled with the tenants and agreed to monitoring, basically to make sure he wasn't intimidating his tenants anymore. The building still stands there, and his son Eric, owns a unit on the top floor. All right, just a brief recap what we have here. And this actually, I probably didn't even do it justice because I didn't go into I didn't go into Trump's love of not tinfoil of the tinfoil hat, but the love of conspiracy theories. But number one was racism. I believe through his actions and through the history, well founded that he's generally racist. Number two was sexism, and I think it's pretty founded. I don't think basically I don't think that he got enough grief for either of these two. And then number three was shady business practices. Again, not enough. So to get back to the original question, was Hillary, was Hillary fairly treated in the election? I mean, at the end of the day, she did end up getting 3 million more votes than Trump, but lost the election because she didn't win the electoral college. And did she get a good rap? Did she get enough respect from voters? I'm gonna say no, and the reason I say no is because I know that I didn't give her my respect. I didn't, like I told you before, I didn't vote for her. I voted for Gary Johnson. And after having done more research into these issues, and honestly, it's also looking back, I would say no. I don't believe that she got a fair rap. I think that the American people were too harsh on her, and that she deserved more at the end of the day. I'm not saying that she's perfect. I think she made some errors. I think that she made some, obviously the entire thing about the basket of deplorables was really poorly chosen. It's a bad decision to say that, especially if that was scripted. But at the end of the day, I mean, you were choosing between someone who made a couple of mistakes, but was seemingly trying their best, and someone who was racist, sexist, and a shady businessman. And we allowed ourselves to get caught up in the ideal of equivalency, that she wasn't that much worse than Trump. Even if you thought that didn't motivate you to vote for Trump. The reality at the end of the day is that she was significantly worse, or he was significantly worse than her, and she was significantly better than him. That's something that the Hillary campaign failed to get across. That we are, myself included, were seduced by Donald Trump, by the campaign, by the Russian trolls, and that's unfortunate. And I just hope that in the future, this November specifically, when we go out to the polls and we go out to vote, that we will. I mean, the only thing we can do with history is to learn from it. We need to learn from the 2016 election. We need to not make those mistakes again. At least not in the near future. I know that I know we're not great at learning things. I mean, otherwise Trump never would have been elected, because if we've learned anything, fascism is bad. I thought 1942 taught us that. World War II taught us that. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. That's that I hope that this November we'll do better. We'll do right. We can right some of the wrongs we committed in 2016. But anyway, I appreciate everybody listening. After the pod, we'll do a little Q&A if you have any questions for me. But if you're listening, I appreciate it. We're live every Tuesday and Saturday at 8:30 Eastern Time at twitch.tv/2m2s. Come up here, hit me up with a follow or subscribe. If you're catching us on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, or Google Play, I do appreciate it. If you could rate us 5 stars, I would much appreciate it. I'm also on Twitter. If you have any questions for me when I'm not on stream, when I'm on stream, like I said, hit me up. Love to hear from you. But we'll be back. I'm on Twitter at RealSamShannon. And again, I appreciate it. And I will see you guys this Saturday, 8:30. Peace.